Tonight's top story started with a small press release from a local jail saying an inmate had passed away. Just a few sentences long, but 10 Investigates wanted to know more about the death, and that led to questions about a certain device used by law enforcement agencies.
Jennifer Titus has found that device has been associated with deaths across the state of Florida and across the country.
His name was Timothy Peters. When he was booked into the jail, he was immediately placed in our medical wing. That followed not long after with him having some issues with bodily functions. There is bodily fluids. A spit hood was placed on his head to keep, any projectile vomiting or spitting or anything like that from impacting the deputies. I think it's important to know that these are not, thick pieces of cloth. They are very, very sheer, and even if wet, they should allow air to pass through. From the time we actually entered the cell till the time CPR was started and life-saving measures was a total of about 21 minutes.
That clip you just saw was video we were told we could not have at first because it was exempt from disclosure by Florida statute. That clip, you can tell, was edited down. It was just 9 minutes. So we asked for the entire unedited version. Our request was denied until our lawyers got involved. We watched the entire 21 minutes and had more questions.
Spit hoods is the topic of today.
Yes.
Do you remember clean spit, bloody spit?
It was a lot of like everything.
At first 2 were put on,
Okay.
and then we brought it down to 1.
You brought it down to 1?
Yeah, because you're not supposed to have 2 on there.
We went through that video to the Sheriff's Office investigative summary regarding Peter's death. In the report, the medical examiner noted she was most likely going to be ruling this as a homicide, since the inmate was wearing a spit sock.
There's a short duration. He was wearing 2.
Very short duration.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, and that was because he was spitting up blood and stuff, so.
Yeah, because it was coming through that shield.
The sheriff denied our interview request, but did allow us to interview Shelby Bishop.
And you've been here since February of this year.
So she wasn't present during the Peters case, but did say she could speak on jail policy regarding spit hoods.
It's a case-by-case basis. It's not something that gets put on every patient, but if it is something that we need to be able to protect ourselves, protect our deputies, protect the patient themselves from harming us so we can, yes, we will.
What about a second spit hood?
Studies have shown that it really doesn't show any significant changes in vitals. If it is necessary, then yes. If it's necessary, again, it's a case-by-case basis.
Prior to our interview, the Sheriff's Office sent 10 Investigates a copy of the study she mentioned. Researchers at the University of California, San Diego studied 10 healthy people that knew what they were signing up for. The study also mentioned researchers did not replicate certain cases, including when a person is agitated, restrained on the ground, or when other bodily fluids are contaminating a spit restraint device, such as blood or emesis, which is throw up.
Have you seen anything where a spit hood has been used after pepper spray and that there's been no sort of difference in vitals or anything? For specific studies, no. But I can tell you that our policy, they do get what's called decontaminated prior to having the spit net placed.
That's not what happened here.
So spit nets and things like that, again, I don't know much about the actual case. Just generalities of what we do today.
But here's Dr. Dan Woodard, an emergency medical doctor in Florida.
One spit hood is perfectly capable of blocking respiration and causing asphyxia. And the other point about decontaminating a person, obviously you can't decontaminate the airways, which is where the respiratory secretions are coming from. So that's also unscientific and irrelevant.
Policy should be informed and shaped by incidents in the field. But but at what cost?
Roy Bedard is a former law enforcement officer and now a consultant for agencies.
It's difficult sometimes, I think, to imagine scenarios that it really takes the real world to show you this can happen, because we're not creative enough sometimes to think about the things that might happen. And so our policies tend to fall short.
When it comes to spit hood policies here in the state of Florida, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement told us they don't have one. When we reached out to agencies in our area, those who use spit hoods had policies that vary. The Polk County Sheriff told us their policy is to use common sense.
Sometimes they're placing it over people's heads and the person starts to vomit, or they're spitting out blood, and then they can choke on their own blood or their vomit, and that can cause them to asphyxiate or die.
That's civil rights lawyer Neil Galawat. He's represented families in cases from Washington to New York where spit hoods were used and people died.
The goal is to safely take the person into custody, not to kill the person. And if there are apparatuses or things that are being used that are doing this, they need to be better educated about that.
We also asked FDLE back in March for the number of cases here in Florida where someone has died and a spit hood was involved. By mid-October, still no answer. So we started researching. That's when we found Valerie Linsenbiegler.
I really don't get to talk about much because it's almost like some people treat me like as if he didn't even exist.
Valerie wanted to talk about her son, Daniel.
An awesome kid. He was such a sweet little boy.
She says that boy got into some trouble later in life and ended up in the Clay County Jail. And 10 days later, he was dead. The medical examiner listed Daniel's death as a homicide. The cause, asphyxia.
He didn't deserve to die.
Daniel was one of the 5 cases in the state we uncovered where a spit hood was used and a person died.
When you found out that he was pepper sprayed and then a spit hood was placed over him, had you ever heard of a spit hood, or what did you know about a spit hood?
I've seen it. It's just a form of torture. It really is. I mean, if he wasn't even spitting, he couldn't even breathe. They didn't even decontaminate him before they put the hood on him. You know, they just sat there and let him, because I guess he was telling them, I can't breathe, I can't breathe.
Investigations by the Sheriff's Office, FDLE, and State's Attorney found no wrongdoing. But the Clay County Sheriff's Office paid Valerie and her family a multi-million-dollar settlement.
Were you surprised that they're still using these spit hoods and the fact that they're still using pepper spray and spit hoods inside our jails together?
Yes, because something was supposed to change, you know, in Daniel's name.
When he was in the shower, and I finally got a chance to look at things. Is he still wearing the spit mask hood?
Yeah, because he was still spitting.
He was still spitting. Okay.
Back in Hernando County, investigations into Timothy Peters' death also found no wrongdoing. The medical examiner finalizing the report, the cause of death undetermined. The Internal Affairs investigation did recommend modifying their spit mask policy to not allow the use of multiple masks unless exigent circumstances are involved.
I took it off.
You took it off?
Yes.
And what was the reason for that, do you know?
Because when he wasn't moving and stuff, and we're like, oh, he doesn't look right. So that's when I just took it off of him.
And the Clay County Sheriff did change their policy after Daniel's death that both the spit hood and pepper spray could not be used together. A death in the Brevard County Jail also resulted in their change of policy to match Clay County's policy. Our law enforcement expert says FDLE really needs to make a universal policy on spit hoods that's used the same way in every agency, as well as universal training. Jennifer Titus.
And you can take another look at that Hernando County jail video that we fought to obtain in our web story. Just go to 10tampabay.com/10investigates.